Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Cabrera, and today I'm going to be talking to you about knowing your worth. This is a subject that a lot of people try to shy away from, mainly because it's so much easier to actually reduce your commissions whenever you get a chance or whenever you think that you might lose a listing. But the reality of it is the value that you bring in is more important than any commission that you'll pay. So I do have clients that I work with that they know my value, and I charge what I charge, and they never question it. Even when they interview other agents, at the end of the day, commission doesn't even get brought up. Mainly because they know what I'm capable of doing. But not always we're gonna have the situation where we actually have clients that know us very well. We're gonna have clients that we call from cold calling, or we're gonna have clients that was referred to us and they don't know us at all, and they're interviewing 4 or 5 agents. How do you overcome that situation on the commission side? Well, it's all about bringing value. And this is something that we're gonna discuss today. And a couple of things that brings in value is you yourself are confident enough to be able to face your client and say exactly what you want. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you what it's all about today in terms of the 3 areas that you can focus on. And this is basically the breakdown of what value is all about. So the 3 types of value that you're looking at is self, contribution, and results. So broken down in terms of who you are, yourself, and how you look at yourself makes a huge difference in terms of how people perceive you. So having value that you bring in based on your confidence makes a huge difference. So building your confidence is very important in our business, because no matter what you're trying to do or how you're trying to convince someone, when you're not confident, they're not confident with you. It's that simple. So who you are and how you define yourself makes a huge difference. We don't look at this enough in our business. We all focus on skills and how to acquire skills, how to speak better with scripts, and if we say this, then the client will react this way. It's not only that. Believe me, that's important, and those script has to come out naturally. But more importantly is the delivery. See, when you're sitting down with with an owner and trying to get them to list a property with you, the delivery of your message is more important than the actual message. And hence the reason why some agents out of 5, 6 other competing agents ends up picking up the listing. Now, if the seller is looking at all the agents as a commodity, you need to be able to differentiate yourself more than a commodity. And when I say more than a commodity is you're 1 out of the 6 agent that offers the same thing, looking at it the same way. And what makes you different is really who you are and how your expertise and your experience is different than others. So if you cannot differentiate your expertise when you're sitting down with a client, don't expect the client to pick you, because if you think about it, if you were the seller, why would you pick 1 of the 6 agents if there's no difference between them? That's when commission gets reduced. See, if you bring in so much value, which I've seen many times, and I've done it myself, I've seen agents charge more than what we typically charge or across the board. There's no typical, everything is negotiable in that sense, but I've seen agents charge 7 or even 8% on a competing 6, 7, 8, 9 agents competing for that listing. What they bring in is confidence on themselves and what they're contributing to the process. And those 2 things actually helps them get more commission than other agents that are competing in the same market. And results. See, without results, and if you are looking at it and you're a seller, without results, you wouldn't want to work with an agent. I wouldn't. I hope you wouldn't either, because to me it's not logical. Why would you work with an agent who's never sold a house? Hence the reason why Samson itself has a mentor program that allows for agents to tie into more experienced agents so that they can use, or what they call borrow, that experience. So then their chances of getting the listing is much higher than if they were doing it on their own. So the mentor program allows you to be able to borrow the expertise of your mentor and bring it into the picture as part of the results that you need to show in order for you to bring value. So again, recap, 3 pillars of value: yourself, who you are, your contribution, what you would do or what you do, and the results, what you produce. And we're going to go into an in-depth detail of that next. Let's talk about self. Well, what is self-value? Well, first of all, your confidence comes from the value you put in yourself. So if you think that your value is not, give me 1 second here. Ethan? Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so self-value. Self-value is comprised of your character, who you are as a person. So one of the things I can tell you is the more you do personal development and listen to a lot more successful people, eventually your character becomes part of what successful people have in their character. So emulating someone successful, or a bunch of people that are successful, and looking at it from what habits they have, what attitudes they have towards situations, how they interact with others, make a huge difference on your character. And then you have reputation. Reputation is another area that you need to focus yourself on, making sure that no matter what you do, even if you're going to make a ton of money, if your reputation is shot, that's your short game or long game. If your reputation is good, when I say good, is overall 95% of the people that interacts with you are satisfied with your work. See, you cannot please everybody in this business, and don't expect that, because it's never going to happen. But if you get 95% of your clients happy with you, you will have a great reputation, and that reputation will bring you clients naturally. Put it this way. On a weekly basis, I get calls for selling, renting, buying houses at least 3 times a week because of my reputation. It's nothing to do with the fact that I'm doing a lot more than I was doing before. It's the fact that these people remember how I took care of them, and by sheer numbers, by sheer thousands of people that have actually interacted over the years, those people are constantly remembering that I'm the person that they need to call when the time comes, because they loved the way I took care of them. Makes a huge difference. And like I said, you cannot please everybody, but if you can shoot a benchmark of trying to make sure that you've done your best to 95% of every single person that you ever met out there that's dealing with you in some ways or another, even just as simple as opening a door to someone and smiling at someone. It's quite interesting because I get a lot of freebies from places that I go to. Sometimes I actually go to a store and I'm trying to buy something, and the owner of the store actually looks at me like, hey, well, you know what, you can have it. I just had that happen like 2 months ago. And my friend that was like next to me, she's like, how did you do that? I never had anything for free. I mean, this is like a $40 item that he just gave you. And plus he gave us free water bottles. How'd you do that? Well, it's not a miracle. It's just over the process time of personal development, I've learned to smile at people, which basically puts you in a 50-60% of the time in good mood with the next person that you're smiling at. And you have them smile too. If they're actually having a bad day, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, somebody paid attention to me. Someone's actually smiling at me. Somebody's actually positive, and I feel positive because this person is actually, I'm reflecting what this person has provided to me. So when you're looking at it from giving, even a simple smile actually gives. There's studies actually done by a Harvard professor that Ritz-Carlton actually They did a study on Ritz-Carlton, and they have a rule in Ritz-Carlton apparently. If you're 5 feet away from any client, you have to actually say hello and you have to smile. That's part of the rules. So they actually are strict on that rules to make sure that they do that. Every single person, every single employee, whether they're a cook or actually a house cleaner, if they're 5 feet away from a client, they have to smile and say, how are you? Or hello. Greet them in a nice way. One of the reasons why is they're in the service business. But more importantly, there's a study that's been done that people reflect your positivity or negativity in the business or in any interaction that you have with people. So if you want to actually change the way your business works and function, it's okay to smile at people. And the more you smile at people, sometimes you connect a certain way. And I've gotten clients, plenty of clients actually, just smiling at people because they end up saying, oh, well, wanted to start a conversation with you. Next thing you know, they happen to be looking for a house. I've had clients who actually bought a house with me after 6 months, and the only thing I did is smile at them on the street. See, the way I look at how I gauge how successful you are in the business is the day you can get clients off the street and actually buying a house with you, okay, the day you'll never starve because there's so many people out there on the street. So they're actually maybe looking for a house, maybe not. But for sure, all of us have a need of some type of housing, whether it's renting or buying. So, outside of the people that are actually homeless, all of us are either renting or bought a house or living in the house that we purchased. So bottom line is, looking at it from that reputation of being able to be positive and constantly making sure that 95% of your clients in general are happy with you. Brand name. Some people spend a lot of money putting out flyers, mailers. Oh, I own this farm here of this particular community. Fine. But there is a fact that you bring value when you have a brand name. So if people seen your name so many times in a particular community, they started to assume or start to think that your name is synonymous to real estate. They start to connect that. And that in itself is a value because when you're sitting down with people they don't know, they would rather sit down with somebody they do. Just like we gravitate towards purchasing a Coca-Cola product rather than a Kirkland product. Maybe Kirkland is actually, their brand name is starting to become more and more apparent out there. But there's other companies out there that never really cared about their brand name. They want to stay generic. And we tend to purchase things that we are familiar with, or we tend to use the services of companies that we're familiar with. So brand name is also a part of value that we can bring in. But it's a very expensive endeavor, especially when you're starting out. My recommendation to you guys, if you want to build your brand name, perfectly fine. Just make sure you're already making income in this business that's enough for you to spend 20% on the marketing to actually create your brand name. If you don't have any money to spend, don't spend it on brand name, creating a brand name. You want to spend your time on other areas that doesn't cost you anything first, and then build up your scenario up to the level where you actually have enough money to put 20% aside and put it on brand name, creating your brand name. Presence. The more you are present in a lot of different events and activities that are out there within the community, within your church, or wherever you belong within your organization, the more presence you have that they can see you, the more likely they can actually gravitate towards you. Because we gravitate towards people that we're familiar with. And if they're familiar of you, or if they've actually seen you in different places, and one day you sit down on a listing presentation, you already have common ground. And they know if you're active in that community that you're bringing some type of value based on your presence in that community. And then you have meaning. When people see you, how do they think about you? Well, it begins again in terms of how you think about yourself. What does it mean to work with Mark? Is it a pleasant experience? What does it mean to work with me? Is it a pleasant experience, or is it going to be a dramatic experience? Well, if people like dramatic experiences, great. Mark is the great person for that. So that's the meaning of who you are as a person, makes a difference in how it transfers to the next person. If you're being referred to someone, it's because your meaning as a human being, as a person, that you actually interact with others is good, because they're willing to put their name on the meaning of successful transactions, or they're putting a meaning that this person is the type of person who will get things done. So people kind of tend to put a meaning towards a particular person, and the number one thing is define yourself, so then the meaning actually come across. And when people look at you, they already know what they're going to put their name on if they were to refer business to you. The bigger part of your business is not from the person you're talking to. It's from the person that is referring business to you. That's like looking at it from an iceberg perspective. So if you're looking at it from the top of the water, you're only looking at 1/10 of the whole iceberg underneath. Well, the underneath part is all the referrals that will come from the business that actually looks small when we're focusing on only people that are ready to buy. So rather than focusing on the people ready to buy, you want to focus on the people that can learn how to refer business to you. I don't know how to stress this enough, but I have agents that I work with that don't realize that the real focus of your prospecting should be how to teach people to refer business to you. When you do that, you grow your business exponentially. But if your focus is how to get that person to buy a house with you, then you're only into that person, and that person half of the time don't like to be sold to. So the more subtle you are and the more friendly you are as a person, and the more you work on yourself, the more value you bring into the table. The next one, contribution. When you're looking at contribution, you're looking at your credentials. See, one of them is showing them what you've accomplished in terms of education, in terms of acquired skills that others don't have. So what is your contribution to this whole process? What is your, when you're getting interviewed, usually they're looking at what you've done, so then they can know what you can contribute to the organization that you're applying for a job for. It's the same thing here. When you're talking to a seller or a buyer, essentially every day you're applying for a job, believe it or not, and they're your boss. And some people treat their clients like the clients are their employee. Well, it doesn't work very well, guys, because at the end of the day, if that buyer or the seller doesn't sell or the buyer doesn't buy, you don't make income. What do you think your boss does? They actually hire you to produce something and they give you income. It's the same thing. So I look at all my clients as my boss. I joke around with them and I tell them, hey, you know what? You're my boss. So you tell me to jump, the only thing I'll ask you is how high. As long as it's legal and it's ethical, I will actually follow exactly your instructions. But that's what we signed up to be agents to begin with, and people forget. You don't tell your clients, well, you have to do this and you have to do that. Well, nobody has to do anything. Let me make it clear, okay? Unless even if they sign a contract that they have to do certain things, you have to take that to court later on and actually deal with it there. I mean, in front of people, the most important part is being able to connect with them in a way that they like you and they can trust you. Now, this is many times I've already brought that up. Likability and trustability is really your key to be able to actually sell a lot of houses and produce in this business. Expertise and specialization. Those are the niches that we put ourselves into, because the way we can contribute to a particular client is if we're expert in that particular field. So that's another value you bring in. Whereas if a person doesn't actually say that they're an expert, let's say in short sales or distressed properties, right? And they come in, and I come in actually and say, hey, this is my contribution. I'm an expert in so-and-so. I'm an expert in distressed sales. So I can help you because I know exactly how to actually run this particular sale to make sure it goes from point A to point B. Make sure that when we get a contract that I know exactly who to talk to, what to say, to make sure that this transaction goes all the way to the end and you can get rid of the house without paying any more money as much as possible. So these are the kind of things that you can contribute to bring value. I don't know how many times back then in 2006 when I first started short sales, when nobody was doing short sales, that I charged my full commission, and just to be able to actually tell them that this is my value. because I've studied it, I've gotten many certifications for it, I've done a lot of training on it, and I've done a lot of short sales. So 236 short sales later, right? Someone comes up to me and tell me, well, you know what? I'm looking for an expert in short sale because I want to short sell my home. I'm like, you're looking at it. Not only have the credentials, but I also have the expertise and also have the experience. So these are the kind of things that you bring into the table that makes value, that brings value to whoever you're talking to. And the work that you're doing, if you're doing a lot of work in terms of listing, right, you can be specialized in listing. If you're doing a lot of work in helping buyers buy homes, you could be a buyer agent, and there's actually even certifications for those as well. And then you have your process. Contribution is also not only just the part where you come in and you actually show them these things. You also tell them, okay, I'm actually part of a team that has these other expertise, or the work is actually distributed, so you're not working just with me, because it allows that if I ever actually take a day off, which all of us do, that you will always be serviced. Your service is always going to be there. So that's very important to understand. Process is another value that you can contribute when you're sitting down with a listing or sitting down with a buyer, or you're sitting down with a seller. Then you got the network, right? So process is one thing, but the network. And I'm saying network because I've picked up listings where the client is actually like, oh my gosh, I need to do a lot of work on this home. And one of my ways to do it is like, oh, you know what? I have a network of people that will actually take care of that and remove all the headache. All you got to do at some point is just move your stuff and get out of that place, and we take care of the rest. And then you can get all the estimates ahead of time. I'll go ahead and send you all this information, get them out there, get you estimates, and then you figure out what you want to do. Well, not all agents have these, because they're so focused on themselves, trying to actually tell the client, hey, listen, you got to work with me because I can actually put this on this publication, and I can actually do these mailings for your property. But you got to understand something. Look at your client and think about it. What do they need? What do they need from you is to relieve their headache of trying to sell their house, or to relieve their headache of trying to find a home, or to actually at least minimize the stress. I mean, all of us would want to minimize our stress. Well, guess what? If I'm actually a stress reliever for you or a headache reliever for you, then I brought value to the table through the networks that I have. So one of the things I do is I always tell my clients, hey, listen, consider me like your aspirin. When you have a headache about anything to do with real estate, you call me and I will relieve that headache, because it will become my job to make sure that those things that you're worried about gets addressed. So this is how important it is that you have a network of people that are doing certain things for you to make sure that your client does not get this stress as much as possible. And the less stress they have, and they know it's you who's giving them less stress, the more they will be loyal to you and stick to you. Because at that point, there's a certain dependency that we tend to have when people are actually doing things for us, because we kind of tend to depend on their services rather than somebody else who's actually focused on themselves. Eagerness to help. Well, there's people out there that has this whole nice process and their ego is up the sky and they're flying like an eagle, right? But they don't really care. And believe it or not, that's a value in itself. When people can see that you care about them, that you want to do something about their issues, about trying to sell their home or trying to buy a home, or know the fact that you care about them as a human being first, because all of us want to be kind of acknowledged that we exist here, not just a robot or a commodity. You want to actually acknowledge that you're a human being, that you do have feelings in most cases. Now, you might meet some narcissist and some sociopath out there that don't really care about emotions and they're just numbers and cents. Oh, great. then that's an exception, okay? You don't bring value to them in that sense, treating them like a human being, because they don't really care. So, but it's always a good habit to do that. So finally, the results. We're going to be focusing on results. When we're looking at results, We're looking at sales volume, statistics, your reviews, your references, your stories, your history, anything that actually shows what you've already done, right? I mean, even when stockbrokers are actually pitching it, it's like, oh, I've done all this thing, but then they have a little disclaimer on the thing, like past result doesn't necessarily mean future results. but believe it or not, psychologically, when you see somebody very successful at what they do and they can sell a lot of houses and they move every single transaction, like, you know, I was in a listing appointment the other day and I was sitting down with a seller that actually like really like looking at us like a commodity, and I mentioned to him about the results, and because she was looking for the results, I showed them all my results, and then at the very end I told her, I said, listen, if you want to list with someone that doesn't sell every single house they list, then list with someone else. Because in the past 365 days, every house that I listed has sold. And there's a reason behind that. Not because there's a lot of different people out there selling houses and just because you put it in MLS, it would sell. Our business also requires a certain amount of skills. This last property that I'm working on that actually just went under contract, it's quite interesting because if you're looking at this particular listing, right, the buyer came from an open house. And the reason why the buyer is buying is because of the value that I brought into the picture. They were not even in the market to begin with. They just happened to drive by. But then I started talking to them. 45 minutes later, the buyer decided, let me see if I can buy. And then that evening came around, they're like, oh, we talked about it, we're not ready to buy. I said, just think about it. If you change your mind, let me know. Kept the door open. Several days later, buyer comes back. You know what? After deliberating this is what we want. Point I'm trying to make to you is not everybody will behave the way I would behave. And I don't expect you to. But this behavior that I have is acquired. It's not natural. I learned this from many different books that I've learned, and I started connecting the dots and everything made sense. So by me really knowing what I needed to say and how I say it and when to say it, it made a huge difference for me to be able to get them to move forward with the transaction. So would that house normally would have sold? Absolutely not without me. So when people are telling me like, oh, Mark, you know, because somebody else can do that. I was like, no, I don't think so. Because I don't think they spend 12 hours a week actually learning how to develop themselves as a better person. Many people don't spend that much time. Every opportunity I get to actually read a book about how to improve myself as a human being, I try to read. Just because I know it impacts my business, and also it impacts how I interact with people. So fine-tuning my skills through personal development made a huge difference. So when you know your worth, when do you know your worth? Well, when you don't let your clients walk all over you. See, one of the biggest mistakes a lot of our new agents have, including myself when I was first starting in this business, is I just want to get that listing or I want to get that buyer. But I didn't care how they treated me. Well, guess what? If they treated you terrible, okay, it's because you allowed them to. Nobody has to be emotionally abused in this business, okay? So when you know your worth and you know your value that you're bringing to the table, you're equals with your client. You're not above your client, but you're not below your client either. Your client should not be putting you down or actually making it think that they know more than you. Well, because if they know more than you, it's hard to sell that client into a home. So make sure that you're on the same level as your client. I don't kiss anybody's behind when I'm actually sitting down with the client trying to actually get the listing. What I do is I give them the realities of what it looks like, what the prices of what we've seen, and they make a decision what price they want to list for. I'm perfectly fine. But I do have limitations, and if the price is actually too much, I will tell my client, well, listen, If you feel like this is the listing that you want to sell it for this amount, come back to me in 2 months when it doesn't sell. Because I would love to sell it for you, but this is not the approach that I would want to take. So know your worth. Don't let your clients actually dictate whatever price that they want. That's actually very, cloud 9 kind of scenario where it's actually in the clouds. Bring him back to earth. That's the whole idea. Bring him back to earth. If you're gonna list the property, at least have it in a decent price within the range. Even if it's in a higher range, that's fine. But if it comes off the range and it's going off the rails, I mean, seriously, consider telling this client, when you decide to drop the price, think about me. And then we'll list the property. So this is the better way to approach it. When you know your worth, it's when you know the value you bring into the table. That's where preparation comes in. That's where all these things that we just talked about, your self-worth, your contribution, and your results, all those things. And if you don't have the results because you're new in this business, you need to partner up with someone who does. Because people like me will eat you up alive out there if we were interviewing with the same seller. Because I've been doing this for a long time, and when I sit down with my seller, I give them a whole size of a Bible book of all these surveys, over 200 surveys in it, that I've actually done a great job. And then I give them all the credentials, included Lifetime Achievement Awards and all these things that I've actually done. And then all these listings, all 400 and 500, close to 500 listings that I've actually done in sales. So when I come in there, I don't come in there with come in there with full blast, with bullets actually flying all over the place, because I want to make sure that my client that I'm actually trying to convince to work with me will not see any of these with any other agent they're going to work with. Because even if they're working with a top-notch agent, a lot of the times that agent is bringing their minions out there to actually pick up that listing. Well, guess what? I'm there, and they're face-to-face with the main guy, right? So that makes a huge difference when I'm trying to convince them, hey, listen, this is my expertise, this is where I'm at. And it's interesting because, I'm training someone that picked up a listing, and we were competing with the other agents, and the one thing I told them, I said, listen, we have to price this at this amount because this is what it will sell the property for. Well, apparently the owner was telling us, well, 3 agents told us the price is like $100,000 more. I'm like, and so I was like, okay, well, then work with those agents. Because I know what my worth is. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And when we left, my trainee's like, why didn't you try to pick up that listing? I said, well, no, wait a couple months and keep in touch with that person that referred you the business, because you're not allowed to call the seller. Keep in touch with her, and eventually you're going to end up here a couple months from now. And sure enough, a couple months later, we're there. Go through the interview again, and this time, the first thing I said is, hey, listen, I told you the price was supposed to be this way, and that's the reason why, I wanted you to actually try it out first. But at this point, you're going to lose more value out of this house because it's been sitting longer on the market and you didn't get any offers. Or if you did get one offer and you mentioned you got one offer, it's way below your expectation. So, and we went through the whole interview again. But this time, the client was not very respectful, I guess, for some reason. She's still looking at this as a commodity. But then, if you know your value, right, that client will come around and will list with you if you were able to present it properly. So I'm fairly confident we're going to end up getting that listing. But the point I'm trying to make to you is, be confident of what you know. And then you'll get somewhere further because people will follow you, not the other way around. As much as I would love to follow my clients, they hire me as their expert, not the other way around. So for you guys who have forgotten that because the listing is actually so hard to come by, hopefully you're watching this today and you'll learn something more that you could apply to your arsenals. When you know, you can make a positive difference to your clients. See, bottom line is, if you're working with your clients and you don't feel like you're going to make a difference in their lives in some way or another, it's kind of not so rewarding in that sense. Because, yeah, money is fine, but that's not really the primary driving forces of successful agents in this field. Most of us, actually, that are very successful in this field is because we have a passion for what we do. So making a difference in somebody's life, having it the biggest purchase that they get to make, or having the biggest investment they get to make most of the time, should make mean something to you, and should make a difference that you care about your clients as much as they care about themselves. So this is very important to understand, that making a difference is something that a lot of us sometimes lose sight of because we're so focused on everything else. But if you have that in mind, it'll translate into something that you can connect with your clients better. And when you feel confident with that, with what you do, people will attract to you. This is something we just talked about. And when you believe in yourself, even when others don't believe in you, I've had this happen to me many, many times, where people told me, like, give up on real estate. You've been in 4 years and you're not making any money. You should be doing something else. And one thing I said, no, I was selling one house a year for the first 4 years of my career because nobody was showing me anything. I didn't know anything about how to sell a house. And my idea was, you know, I got a college degree. I got an accounting degree. And I'm actually very productive. I've been working since I was 12 years old. I mean, I know this. I got this, right? Well, I didn't. The reason why is because I got the wrong attitude. I was green and wet in the ears, didn't know what to do. And I went out there thinking that I know what I know, but really what I didn't know is something that I needed to know. So it's like I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. Not until I started working on reading books. Like the first one I read was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And I got into that, and next thing you know, I read it like at least 7, 8 times in like 2 months until I got so obsessed with the ideas that he had, it started translating into me applying those knowledge and applying those things that I've learned from it, and then I started seeing results. And then the other part is, the other thing that I was looking at the time is, I was looking at this #1 agent that was in our office at the time, and I was looking at him like, oh my gosh, this guy's making like $200,000 a year at the time, you know? I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I need to get to know this guy, because eventually, if I learn what he knows, then money might rub off on me, and next thing you know, I'm making money. Well, believe it or not, that ideology actually works in a way, because when you hang out with successful people, you start behaving like successful people do. You start picking up habits what successful people does. And then you become successful yourself. So this is something that even Les Brown actually brought up at one of his speeches when he was talking about how he got rid of some of his, non-successful friends and started hanging out with successful friends. And it actually made a difference in his life and his career and his lifestyle. Because you become what your environment that you create around you. When you know that it's okay to walk away, knowing that it's not your loss. This is a big thing. Sometimes we feel that when people reject us and we walk away from something, that we have regrets that we should have or we could have done something about it, or something that we feel like, oh my gosh, I could have picked up that listing had I not actually just tell them to give it to someone else. Well, when you're confident about what you're giving in value, none of that matters. As a matter of fact, you feel sorry for those people that didn't take the value that you bring, because if you have a lot of value that you've accumulated over the years by actually doing personal development, by actually getting all your certifications and everything that you need to know about particular areas, got specialized in certain areas, and then on top of that, you're producing results for others already, that kind of thing, you don't worry about actually walking away for something. The biggest problem all of us have in real estate is that when we have 1 or 2 clients, we cling on to those clients, and then we create drama out of it each and every time they give us drama. The reason why they give you the drama is because you're so focused on them that they feel like they should kind of, give you a little drama this way. But if you have 50, 60, 80 clients that you're working with, imagine this. Rather than flying 100 feet off the ground, if you're flying on an airplane, flying 50,000 feet off the ground, when you look down to the ground, that's actually your equivalent to your problems. It's tiny, it's minuscule. So clients that actually really don't care about you and disrespect you or put you down, you can walk away from it. Why? Because you got 49 other clients that are waiting for your services because you're doing your best and you're doing a great job, right? Because you can't please everybody. That's a fact. You're going to have nasty people out there. You're going to have nice people out there. You're going to have evil people out there that are trying to get you in trouble all the time. And you have people that are actually like emulating or like, you know, lifting you up to everybody else and referring business to you. You're just going to have those people. The only question is, if you only have 2 clients, what are the clients you have? So that's the point I'm trying to make to you, is you need to build up your clientele to the level that you care about them, but you don't care if they don't care about you. See, this is how you can pick and choose your client, is when you have a lot of clients. So being able to walk away from a client is okay, as long as you know for yourself that you're giving value more than as much many people out there that are in the real estate business, that you're giving more value than most of the people out there. But if you're new in this business, tie in with somebody who can on the results part, right? The contribution part, you could do that on your own. I mean, you can improve yourself in many ways. Personal development side of it. So these are the 3 pillars that you can bring value in when you're sitting down with your clients. Finally, this one here, when you know that it's good investment to invest in yourself. Oh my gosh, I'm spending $1,500 on the seminar. I used to say that on my first 4 years of my career when I wasn't making any money, because that's a lot of money for me at the time. But when I've learned how much value it brought into my business, that it took me from making $8,000 a year, not even that actually, $4,000 a year, because I have to split it with my broker, making $4,000 a year to making over $100,000 a year. That's the difference on investing on yourself. At some point, I was spending $10,000 to $15,000 a year on myself, $6,000, $7,000 on coaching, which, by the way, you don't have to spend at Samson. This is the craziest part about Samson, actually. That's what I love about this company. I never seen such a business model that actually caters to us, to the point where people, the organization itself is not making money through agents, but they're making agents money. It's amazing. So I'm actually coaching several people. I have one started in April. Came up to me and wanted to coach. In less than 3 months, basically, he went from selling 4 houses in 1 year last year to selling 4 houses in 3 months. And then he's got 2 under contract on top of that. He's got 4 listings actually on top of that, and probably around 11 buyers, which he lost count of because he's got so many buyers. But how do we do that, right? Well, one of the most important part of our business is value. Each and every client that wants to work with him is because he brings in value. And how do we bring in value? Well, there's actual value, right? And there is perceived value. Actual value is something that's tangible or something you can see. Perceived value is something that you can say and actually work your way through that process of getting those 3 pillars that we talked about earlier, about yourself, who you are, what can you do for that person, right? Contribution, and what results have you produced. So in this case, basically, he's got enough now to actually show, hey, I'm producing results. Let me show you what I've done with my last client. Rather than saying, oh, I've done this in a whole year. Well, I could get away with that because I've been in the business a long time and I'm selling houses, right? But for someone who's actually taking off, they can talk about like the clients that they just took care of like a month ago. Stories. Remember, that's one of the things, your history and your stories. So the better your stories are, the better real it is, by the way. I mean, I don't encourage telling just stories that are actually fake because people can see right through that, or they can verify these things. So The next one we're going to be talking about is when you can ask for your compensation without discounting your commission. This is how you know that you put in value, because nobody would need to question how much you should make. Sometimes when people ask me like, hey, can you just cut your commission in half? And I look at them, can your boss cut your income in half? Will you still work as hard? I mean, you got to put it in both directions here, you know? I mean, if you're going to ask me to cut my commission in half, ask your boss to cut your income in half and see how that feels. See, you know, what's good for the goose is also good for the gander. I mean, I've heard that saying before. It's a cliche, but there's some truth to that, right? When you can set your commission amount that you deserve based on your evaluation of the value that you're providing, and not having your client to lower your compensation. See, you're bringing in something of value, right? And you already put an amount on that value. Now you have to justify that value, so then the amount actually follows it. So when you're talking to your client and you're telling them you're gonna do certain things, by the way, if you're gonna say something you're gonna do, you better darn do it. Because at the end of the day, you might get away with that client, but that client will never refer business to you. So you're cutting yourself on the foot when you actually say something that you're not gonna do. So that's another rule that you have when successful people are successful, and you can see this across the board, and you can research it on Google if you want, or study this on your own. Successful people will say and do what they say. That's just bottom line. Otherwise, don't say it. This is the way I look at it. When you know how to negotiate your commission based on the value you bring to the table, this is how you know your worth. When you understand your hourly rate and say no to work that doesn't get you to that yearly income that you're going after. So let's say you set yourself up, you want to make $100,000 a year. Well, that's an easy calculation for me, because a lot of people have asked me, how do I make 100 grand in this business? Well, first, break it down to your hourly rate. What is an hourly rate of $100,000? Well, break it down to how many hours you're going to work. You're going to average about $50 an hour if you're working full time. So if you want to work part-time, then that's twice as much. Your worth is $100 an hour. So if you're on a part-time basis in this business and someone asks you, and you want to ask the question, how make 100 grand? Well, if you're part-time, 20 hours a week, right? You're $100 an hour value. So if you're not doing $100 an hour value on the 20 hours that you're working each week, when I say value, I mean whatever you're spending. If you're spending time on Facebook, that's practically, and you're telling me, oh, marketing, great, wonderful. You're lucky if you get $5 an hour out of that, okay? Your $50 an hour is best spent on the 2 hours you're gonna make on phone calls, okay? Or the 3 hours you're gonna spend in events or other places where you can network. This is where you make your money. This is where you make your process work. Prospecting. So if you only have part-time here, your $100 an hour is all on prospecting, majority of it. Now, the other part of it, of course, is going to be dealing with showing houses, listing properties, and all that stuff. When you're part-time in this business, if you spend more time doing that than you're not prospecting, then your business is going to be a roller coaster. How often does that happen to all of us in terms of a roller coaster business? A lot. And the reason why is we first got excited about this motivational speaking I'm doing today, and then you actually start doing all these things that we talked about, and then you start getting clients. But then you forgot that those clients came from all those prospecting and all those activities that you were doing. Now you're too busy showing houses and listing properties. By the time you're finished with those clients, you have no business. So, if you want to build up your business, you got to do prospecting, whether or not you have a lot of clients, or little clients, or whatever, and you delegate the things that you can pay someone less than the amount you want to make. I don't know anybody that pays their administrative $100,000 an hour on a part-time basis or $50 an hour on a part-time basis. I don't know anyone. I swear to you. Let me know. Maybe you're the assistant of Microsoft CEO or something, or Apple CEO. Maybe they get paid that much, because if you imagine, the CEO makes millions of dollars, right? So point I'm trying to make to you is, in our business, you can get away with hiring someone minimum or slightly a little bit minimum wage and train them to be your admin. Once you get to that point where you got so many listings and so many buyers that you're dealing with that you don't have time for prospecting. Prospecting should be you in touch with the people around you that can bring in business to you. Not necessarily the actual buyers or listings, sellers that are actually selling houses, but you got to teach as many people out there. Your job is to prospect, to teach other people how to refer business to you. That's the exponential approach to this business. So your hourly rate makes a difference in terms of your yearly rate. If you don't even know your hourly rate, just look at what you've done in a past week and then look at it and say, are those things that I did for 20 hours on a part-time basis in the real estate, was I actually producing $100 an hour worth of production? And if the answer is no, then you're dreaming about your yearly annual income. Next, again, on the next page, when you can be yourself and build relationships around you, okay? And around you based on who you are. Because a lot of the time, some people, they try to build business around them and pretend to be something they're not. In temporary case, in a small case, it will work. But on a large scale, overall, in the long term, you will fail. I've seen people actually fail in this business so many times when they try to actually reach up. Oh, I'm going to do luxury marketing. Great. I'm going to be listing $1 million house. Great. $1 million house requires $1 million friends, requires $1 million spending because they go to $1 million places. So just be ready for it. I mean, you know, your budget of non-$million actually, and you're hanging out with $1 million people, it will not get you there. So you understand that there's a dynamic that you bring in value and in your worth is also based on the people around you. And if they're worth a lot, guess what? You're gonna actually be spending a lot as well to keep up with the Joneses. So you don't need to be that. Just be who you are. You have value based on who you are, okay? And the more you improve yourself, the more value you bring in, and the more people you'll have around you that would want to actually work with you. You can speak up and say what you think because you also value your own opinion. See, we are all raised in a certain way when we're growing up. We are raised by our parents or whoever raised us, or who was our custodian, or if you were actually, you know, out there, unfortunately, couldn't get a family or whatever. Or you raise yourself, okay? But a lot of the times what you don't realize is there's so many people out there who are told that their opinion didn't count or doesn't count because they're being told that they have to follow a certain way. And we're also taught here in school, we're also taught in college and universities this way, where we are going to school to become a professional 90% of the time to work for someone else. We are actually trained and groomed to work for someone else. There's a few colleges and universities out there that encourages or even teaches entrepreneurship. Not many, okay? Because that mindset is contradictory to controlling society in general. So what happens is our opinion, half the time we keep it to ourselves because we don't feel that there's no value to our opinion. Well, put it this way. If you're in the real estate business and you got to know your business very well, your opinion counts. Even though sometimes I tell my client, you know what, my opinion doesn't really matter here because unless you're planning to adopt me or move in with you or pay rent or pay the mortgage with you, I mean, you're the one making the shots. You're the one calling your shots. But I will still give my opinion after that because I know that my opinion can influence them one way or the other or help them in some way or another. But a lot of times I don't give my opinion out unless I'm asked, mainly because the facts will actually speak for itself. So when somebody asks me, how much should I price the house for? I show them everything. And I tell them, okay, well, you know, according to this is looking like this. But like I said, unless you're planning to adopt me, I mean, and make money off of this house, then great. I mean, but my opinion doesn't count in that sense. But then I also toss it out there to make sure that they hear my opinion. You can choose the clients that you want to work with. This is something that I already discussed with you. The more clients you have, the more you can choose who you want to work with, because best use of your time. If an agent out there doesn't like you and you don't like a client that you're working with, refer it to the agent you don't like. So hopefully that agent gets to like you, and then the person that you just referred got it out of your hair, so you don't have to deal with that client. And at the same time, it's a sweet revenge because you're still making money from that person somehow or another. And at the same time, you have a perception that the person didn't like you all of a sudden now, starting to like you. So it's one of the things that I've done over the past many, many years I've been in this business, and it's so effective because at the end of the day, I turn my 95% that likes me into 96% that likes me, right? Can never turn it to 100, but hey, I'm getting closer. That's the way I look at it. So you can take pride with each benchmark you accomplish. That's something that we don't stress enough, because to begin with, we don't have plans. We go into this business actually, oh, we're going to sell houses, and then you don't even have like, what's your annual income you're going to make in this business? How many houses you're going to, people are actually so focused on their volume, right? I mean, if you notice, volume is always out there. Oh, I make 30 million in sales volume, multi-million-dollar agent, great. Feed the ego. But the problem is they don't have a benchmark. See, having a benchmark is having a plan of what you're trying to accomplish, whether you're trying to improve yourself to grow, or whether you're trying to improve your business to make a certain amount of income. It has to be written, because whatever gets written, right, gets reminded that you wrote it for a reason. More importantly is what gets measured by actually putting it down on paper gets done. See, if it's all in your head, then your income is going to be all in your head. It's not going to be on a paycheck. It's not going to be something cashable. I get my agents all the time come up to me, it's like, oh, it's because of this and it's because of that. I'm like, okay, great. You want me to actually make this check payable to excuses? See if you can cash it. Because you can't. That's the bottom line. You can't cash the excuses. You can't change your lifestyle on excuses. This is the point I'm trying to make. So if you want to know your worth, you have to understand that you need to take pride on the accomplishment that you accomplish, a certain benchmark. Never compare yourself to other agents, because other agents have their lives to work with as well. Because I've been there. I mean, I kind of feel sorry for me at some point, thinking like, oh my gosh, all I'm doing is working. Yeah, great. I'm making like, $180,000 in 1 month. This is like wonderful. Great, but I don't have a life, and my ex-wife wanted to divorce me or something, or like, my kids don't even know me anymore. I look at that and I say to myself, like, how can I compare myself to everybody else? I can't. Yeah, maybe I'm considered successful, but I'm a total failure in terms of my family, right? So everybody lived their life a certain way. So don't compare your success with other people's success. Compare your success based on what you have a year ago compared to what you have 2 years ago. And compare your success not just on the money part, but also in your lifestyle part, also in your everything that you have, your spiritual part, because our lives are based on balance. And no matter what anybody tell you, okay, our lives depend on the balanced life. Because if you can be successful in real estate and that's all you did all your life, guess what? Everything else will fall apart. So just be careful, what you ask for. Success is actually painful as well in terms of the real estate side. So just keep yourself balanced in that sense. You do what you say, what you would do. And I talked to you about that already. You focus on your strength and delegate your weakness. Before, when I was growing up, I was always thinking, oh my gosh, what if I actually become good at the things I'm not good at? So I became an accountant because I was failing accounting. And so I said to myself, oh, I'm failing accounting. I'm getting A's on other classes, but I'm failing accounting. Well, guess what? I'm going to become an accountant just because of that. Well, wrong choice of profession in a way, because obviously I never got into accounting. I got into sales, which is completely opposite of accounting, because I was always thinking about how to strengthen the areas I'm weak at. And then later on, there's this guy named Henry Ford. I'm sure you guys heard of him. He actually built a whole empire of Ford cars. And one of the things he was actually mentioning is, you don't need to have the skills. He was suing a publication company for telling him that he was telling everybody that he was illiterate, that he only finished 6th grade of education. And when he went to court and he was actually being interviewed, one thing he was mentioning, this was from a book actually, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. One thing he mentioned is like, well, you know what? I don't need to actually have those skills. My skill is to organize the people, the skills that's necessary to accomplish my goal, which is building cars. So if you're considering me illiterate, it's incorrect. I'm very literate. I can read and write, and that's all I need to know. And outside of that, I can organize people much better than anybody out there, because I've actually created the assembly line. And I created a mass-produced car, which is the first mass-produced car in the United States. More importantly, what he mentioned is he didn't need to learn the skills that he was not good at. He just needed to focus on the strength that he had, which is being able to organize people. So essentially, that's the message that he put out there. And to me, it made sense. Applied it to my life years later, made millions of dollars in real estate. Lifetime Achievement Award done in 5 years, where most people take a whole lifetime to do. Why? Because I learned to delegate my weakness, and I focused on my strength. And my strength was prospecting, face-to-face with people, and learning how to be influential to people. So this is something that you guys need to think about. You're gonna get into this business, don't give it a try. Do it and make it bigger for yourself. Change your lifestyle. Change your savings account and make it a lot bigger than what you're actually expecting. You can do anything that you actually, you've heard of this, you can do anything that you actually put your mind to. Well, more importantly, no. You could do a lot more if you learn how to delegate the right things to the right people. Run the business. Don't let the business run you. Okay? So the next one, you don't question or overanalyze your client's reactions. You constantly assume that you would be received positively. Okay? There's so many times that we were taught that certain things will happen. It never happens. And then we become that type of person that will actually tell you, oh, well, you know what? It's going to happen this way. I was like, I don't think so. Because I'm a very positive guy, and I'll just tell you, it's going to happen the way I envision it to happen, because it will eventually happen if you visualize the positive part, because you start to behave that way when you're around that person, and that person continues that way. So if you've had a situation where you're sitting down with a person and you're trying to kind of like convince them a certain way, and you keep telling them asking them something, and you keep getting them to say yes, and eventually even the ones that don't want to actually say yes to, they start saying yes to. Well, that's exactly the idea, is what you think is what it becomes. Or if you're actually driving one day and you actually look a certain direction and the car swerves that direction, well, because you're thinking that direction and your whole body is moving that direction. So it's that whole the motion of direction makes a big difference in terms of what results you're gonna produce. If you're coming in there trying to produce a certain positive result for yourself, then start thinking that the positive result is happening. And when you sit down with that person, it's gonna happen that way, because your confidence will actually drag that person into working with you on the goal that you set. That's called influence. But if you come in there and you're saying, oh my gosh, this person's going to say this and this person's not going to do this, then guess what? You're sending out that message inadvertently. You don't even know you're sending that message. Your whole facial expression sends that message. Your body language sends that message. The tonation of voice sends that message. So it's very important you come in with what you have in mind to make sure that your influence is actually much greater. You don't need constant reassurance. You know, this is one of my biggest problems sometimes. Like I'm thinking like, oh, did I do a great job? Did I do a great job? I'm always constantly checking. Because all my life, right, I've gotten this scenario where somebody will tell me, oh, you're not good enough. Oh, you're not this, and you're not that, and you're not doing this. I mean, I'm constantly getting this, right? Well, now I'm blocking those people or those comments that are actually being given to me. Because to me, the way I look at it, I'm a stubborn kind of guy. So, and I'm going to take a direction that I want to take to make sure I get to where I need to go. So nobody's going to get in my way. This is my mindset, right? Because I don't need reassurance from anyone whether I'm going to succeed. The only reassurance I have is what did it look like 6 months ago? Is it better or is it worse? This is my gauge. That's the benchmarking I'm looking at. And when you start looking at your life like this, all of a sudden everything actually looks better, because when you're looking at 6 months ago, you weren't paying attention. It's like, and then 6 months later, you've been paying attention for the next 6 months. I guarantee you it improved, whatever you're trying to pay attention to. It's like driving on the highway. You don't look at McDonald's when you're not hungry. But then all of a sudden when you're hungry, you see all these McDonald's or all these restaurants, right? It's because you're more focused on those particular goal, which is eating in that case. So it's natural. This is what I'm trying to tell you. It's natural for you to gravitate towards a particular direction. It's natural for you to try to get reassurance from other people. But in reality, the only reassurance you have is within yourself and within what you've accomplished. That's the benchmarking I'm talking about. Not comparing it to others or what other people think about what you've done. You know how to be selective as to who will use your time. There's a lot of time wasters out there and a lot of time wasting people out there, okay? Because they think that you don't have anything better to do than to actually be in their world and pay attention to them, okay? For children, it's never a waste of time because it's your children, okay? For other people's children, I don't know, maybe if it's cousin, nephew, nieces, someone related, someone you care about, great. But for complete strange children and you're going to spend time with them, you're going to get in trouble. Not only that, if you start spending time on people that are actually wanting to eat up your time just to actually feed their ego, you don't need that. So you can actually still have communication with people. You can minimize communication with people that you don't like or don't actually serve the purpose of your goals, which is either building a relationship with them because they're kind and nice and sweet people, or if they're evil and mean people, you don't need to spend time with them. So you take it to a minimum. There's even a software app on your phone that when you call that person, it goes directly to their voicemail. You just leave a voicemail every time. So they call you, the voicemail, then call you, and after a while, they actually get tired of calling you and they stop calling. Great, But I'll call them once in a while just to remind them I'm still in real estate, and just in case they have a buyer or seller. So I already taught them how to actually refer business to me. That's what they're good for me at that point. Because the people that are actually positive, the people that are happy, the people that are actually encouraging, the people that they're looking, that you want to hang around with because they're funny and they're just, give you good vibes, I'll hang out with them all day long. Well, not necessarily, because remember, are they worth $50 an hour of my time? Or if you want to make $100,000, with me, are they worth $300 of my time? This is what my goal looks like, right? So that's how I look at everything. And it's interesting because some successful people out there look at it the same way. It's like, oh, it's not worth me calling the client. Of course not. You're the owner of a freaking company that actually makes all this big, transactions, and you're doing so many transactions. There's no way you can go into the, minuscule part of each and every detail. You have to understand, you got to make best use of your time. So when you and I sit down, right, I'm actually a business owner that's talking to a business owner. Is it worth your time then? Of course, because I can give massive amount of clients to your organization. So that's where the time is best spent. Not that person talking to one individual client each and every time. But then at the same time though, some people, like this person that I'm talking about, have an organization but don't want to make changes to improve. So I know for a fact that that organization will always be small because of the fact that there's no constant adjustments to the areas that are weak in that organization. So your time is very valuable. So manage your time to make sure whatever you're doing is going towards a goal that you're trying to set, or that you set already, You believe that the right person will see your ideas as well. And that's really like preemptive. You know, I'm sitting down with you, right? And I'm assuming that you're going to actually understand my ideas. I'm going to keep explaining and explaining, explaining, explaining if you keep asking the question because you don't understand it, right? So that's the best use of my time at that moment. But at the same time, though, I'm assuming by the time we finish this conversation that you understand me and I understand you. You understand that you finish anything that you start so that you can see the value of your efforts. There's people out there that look at time, but rather than looking at it from what they spend or what they complete, they're looking at it and what they spend. So when they're looking at it from what they spend a lot of time, and then when it gets difficult, they quit. Well, guess what? You used up all that time and you quit. It's gone. You can't bring it back. But if you're going to get into something, make sure that you know you can complete the work or whatever it takes to complete the work. So if you actually failed an exam the first time and you have another opportunity to take it, then take it. If your objective is to get that exam and you actually get your license for something, keep taking it because that's what you set yourself up to do. Otherwise, everything else is a waste. So whatever you start, do everything you can to finish. I have a general rule of the 80-20, 80% that any 80% that I start, I actually make sure I complete. So maybe one or two, certain things I get into and I know for a fact that at some point after evaluating, it was not a good idea, fine. Maybe you have an exception to the rule. But 80% of the time, you should be able to actually start and finish whatever you start. So we're gonna go into now psychology of value. Psychology of value goes like this, at least in my eyes. This is my process, so you can create your own, okay? Perception is reality. When someone perceives something and you actually explain something and they perceive it a certain way, that's their reality. If you don't know how to explain it and they perceive it a certain way, that's their reality. So the better you can explain things to people, the better they will have a reality that you want them to see. And value is a perception. It's not always reality. Because I've seen it so many times where one agent charges 8%, they're not giving the same amount of value if someone's charging 6% or 5% or 4%, doesn't matter. Point is, if they could be charging a lot more, but they're giving the same value or even less sometimes, and I've seen it, right? So it's a perception is reality, right? Well, value is a perception. Preparation to present value brings confidence. So for you to present value to someone, you need to be prepared on these three pillars that I just mentioned to be able to show them value. But you need to be prepared. So then when you go in there, you're confident. And confidence is contagious. I'm pretty sure you heard about this, but I'm sure there's a lot of examples out there that one person is confident and bringing the other person into confidence because they say, oh, if this person can do it, I can do it, right? So it brings other people to be confident because of what you do and how you present it. So when you present things in confidence, you give confidence to that person to be confident in you. Confidence helps with trust. And why do we need trust? Very simple. Likability, trustability equals client. Loyalty. A client that trusts you and like you will work with you. A client that don't trust you, even if they like you, won't work with you. Trust helps create value. So the more trust that you have, right, that trust itself is the value. Because at some point, your client can even tell you, hey, Mark, I know you're looking out for my best interest. Put down whatever we need to put down there to actually counter the other party. I was like, are you sure? Because this is my plan. Yeah, it's logical, but more importantly, we trust you. You're looking out for our best interest, which I am. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm looking out for their best interest. And then we make it happen that way. Simple. Everything becomes simple because trust in itself is a value. And value creates referral. So when you bring value to somebody, right, they're willing to put in their name and their reputation to refer you to the next person. But if you don't give any value to that person, there's no reason why they would want to refer business to you. Because why would you want to actually refer somebody that didn't feel good? The fact that that person actually even not only didn't give you any value, but sometimes took away value from you. When I say took away value from you, is that person did something wrong to you. You won't. And referrals create trust. So it's like a whole circle. Everything actually, and that's pretty much the psychology of what I'm actually looking at, of what value is all about. So I have a quote here that I got it, Jean de la Bruyere, it's like a French person here. A person's worth in this world is estimated according to the value they put on themselves. Just as I said, invest in yourself by attending these kind of courses. Invest in yourself by attending seminars and actually, hiring a coach or a mentor. Invest in yourself by reading books that will improve you and the way you express yourself to others. It improves your behavior as well. See, the difference between you and I is not how good I am in this business. It's how good I am as a person. Because if I'm not a good person, there's not many people who would want to work with me. Finally, know who you are, what you do, and how you make a difference. This is how you know your value. This is my quote. So, to those actually here listening to this, I appreciate everything that Samson does, and I appreciate you. And have a good day.